phones, Babylons can't crack the code.
What do YouTube? B Kelly back again with another banger. Today's video, y'all, I'm going to be talking about my top 10 quarterbacks for the 2020-21 college football season. Now, I'm going to give this quick disclaimer. All these quarterbacks have played at least a season and they've been starting quarterbacks. So that means more than likely Spencer Rattler's not going to make this list. But this list can change at any moment in the season, near the end of the season, because players are always changing. People get hurt, people come up, people rise up. Like Spencer Rattler, for example, could easily be a top 10, top 5 quarterback by next year's list I make. Now, before I get to the top 10, let's talk about 4 honorable mentions that just missed out on the top 10 but could easily get into the top 10. Brady White from Memphis, Kyle Trask from Florida, De'Aaron King from Miami, and KJ Costello from Mississippi State. Coming in at number 10, I have Brock Purdy from Iowa State. Now, Brock Purdy is a pretty dang good quarterback, and he's really helping this Iowa State squad out, and some people even see them as contenders in the Big 12 this upcoming season. He helped them to go 7-6 this past season with a bowl game loss to Notre Dame in the Camping World Bowl. And this past season, his stats were he completed 65.7% of his passes, threw for 3,982 yards, 27 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions. Going into the 2020 college football season, Brock Purdy is expected to make a big leap, especially with Iowa State, in hopes to achieve their first ever 10-win season in school history. Coming in the 9th place spot for me, I have Ian Book. Now, Ian Book is a pretty good quarterback, and he gets a lot of hate for really no reason at all. Yes, his pass completion is not the best this past season, but he is 33-3 these past 2 seasons as a starting quarterback, which that is really good. Now let's talk about his numbers from this past season. This past season, he completed 60% of his passes, threw for 3,034 yards, with 34 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Ian Book is a pretty good quarterback on a pretty good team. He knows how to win games. He knows how to pass the ball accurately and keep the ball out of defenders' hands. Goals for Ian Book and Notre Dame is to reach the college football playoff yet again. Coming in at my number 8 spot, I have Tanner Morgan, who has helped shape the Minnesota football team into Big Ten contenders. Tanner Morgan this past season completed 66% of his passes while throwing for 3,253 yards with 30 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. The goal for Tanner Morgan and the Minnesota Gophers football team is to reach the Big Ten championship game and hopefully dethrone the Ohio State Buckeyes. Coming in at my number 7 spot, I have Shane Boucher, quarterback for SMU. Now, this past season, Shane Boucher helped the SMU Mustangs reach their first 10-win season since 1984, and they were a very, very explosive offense under him, and it's the first time they've been big in a while. Now let's talk about the stats. He completed 62.7% of his passes while throwing for 3,929 yards, 34 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. This upcoming season, the goal for Shane Boucher and SMU is to keep building the momentum from last season and to hopefully win the American Conference. Coming in at my number 6 spot, I have Kendon Slovis. Now, even though Kendon Slovis is number 6 on my list, he could be a top 5 quarterback. He has that potential. He helped USC go to an 8-5 record last season, and he put up some really good numbers, and I feel like I should mention this before I continue. Kendon Slovis wasn't even originally the starter last season. He came in once people got hurt, and he balled out, and he took the starting job. Even made Jaden Daniels transfer to Georgia because he took that job from him. Now let's talk about his stats from this past season. He was insanely accurate, completing 72% of his passes, threw for 3,502 yards with 30 touchdowns and only 9 interceptions. The goal for USC this season is to go to the Pac-12 championship game and win the Pac-12. Coming in at my number 5 spot, I have Jaden Daniels for Arizona State. Now, Jaden Daniels is a quarterback that has a ton of potential. This guy completed 60.7% of his passes last year, threw for 2,943 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Now, you may be wondering, why is he ahead of some of these people when he doesn't even have better stats than some of the people behind him? Now, I think he is slightly better than all those other quarterbacks because he is a threat in the air. He has a really strong arm and a very good mobility with him. He can run the ball when he wants. He's just more of a threat in the air. But Jaden Daniels helped a Arizona State squad that some people really didn't think was that great going into the season to an 8-5 record, and now they're seen as a sleeper team and a team that could possibly win the Pac-12 this season if they can get past Oregon. Coming in at the number 4 spot, I have Sam Howell for UNC. Now, last year at North Carolina, he helped lead a very young Tar Heel team to a 7-6 record, while he put up some very good numbers. Now, even though they went 7-6, they were a really young team, and some of the games they lost were very close. But let's talk about his season alone this past year. He completed 61.4% of his passes while throwing for 3,641 yards with 38 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. Now, obviously, the goal for North Carolina this season is to reach the ACC championship game and beat Clemson, since they've been a powerhouse in the ACC these past few years, and it seems like no one's ever going to stop them. Coming in at the number 3 spot, I have Sam Ellinger for Texas. Now, even though Texas's football team has been disappointing this past decade, and they really didn't live up to the hype this past season going 8-5, Sam Ellinger was still a very good quarterback. This past season, he completed 65% of his passes, throwing for 3,663 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions only. And you can only expect his game to go up from here. He's the best quarterback in the Big 12 right now going into the season, and he's one of the top quarterbacks going into the season now with all of his experience and all the games he's played and how much he's already shown how much of a good quarterback he is. And the goal for Sam Ellinger and the Texas Longhorns this upcoming season is to win the Big 12 and get back into a New Year's Six Bowl or maybe even the playoffs. Coming in at my number 2 spot, I have Trevor Lawrence. Now, in my opinion, he is barely edged out by my first place spot, and that's just my opinion. He could easily be number 1 in your opinion, and he's really not that far from being number 1 in my opinion. But let's talk about this past season for Trevor Lawrence. This past season, he lost his first ever college football game as a starter and a player. And he lost to a team that some people say is the best college football team ever in the national championship game, to LSU. But let's talk about his stats real quick. He completed 65.8% of his passes, threw for 3,665 yards with 36 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Now, this upcoming season, Clemson's goal is to reach an ACC championship game, win it, win the playoffs, win a national championship, and, of course, Trevor Lawrence's goal, along with all that, is to win the Heisman. Coming in at my number 1 spot, the player who I think is the best player in college football and the best quarterback in college football, Justin Fields for Ohio State. Let's talk about his stats this past season. He completed 67.2% of his passes while throwing for 3,273 yards with 41 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. Now, obviously, the goals for Ohio State this upcoming season is to win the national championship, plain and simple. And Justin Fields' goal, along with that, is to win the Heisman and to be the number 1 quarterback selected in the 2021 NFL Draft. If you guys liked the video, remember to smash that like button, turn on them post notifications, and subscribe for more videos. B. Kelly out.